Hello. So for the title for assignment number one, I chose Life Events Within Loneliness in Young Adults, written by me. So for the second question, the introduction and research question, I chose the topic of loneliness, and my research question being how can significant life events impact young adults with the outcome of loneliness? For the third question, within my population of interest, I chose my population of interest to be young adults from around 18 to 27 of all ethnicities who have gone through a significant life event or transition, either recently or in the past. There's no time constraint to show future coping skills after experiencing those situations of isolation as well. So for number four's connection to Going's anti-racist, anti-oppressive framework, describing it the two ways, I chose the first one being critical reflection on power and privilege, which is how researchers should regularly engage in reflexive practices, examining how their personal biases and privilege might shape the research process, and actively work to mitigate any harm caused by these biases. And the second one being decolonizing research practices, which researchers should respect and honor indigenous and marginalized knowledge systems and practices while designing studies, ensuring that research methods are culturally responsive and inclusive. So for all four studies that I found, I was actively focusing on the loneliness and the life events occurring with loneliness. So these studies do not have ethnicities or any marginalized community as a part of the focus within the study participants. They're really not really mentioned. The main focus should be, age and the sex of the participants, but not on ethnicities because there needs to be the focus on the loneliness and the live events, creating the loneliness and life events, not live. I don't know why it says live events, but yeah. So, for question number five of reflection of our own positionality. So, for my positionality statement, it is as a person who is currently a young adult and has experienced loneliness, I understand the mental engagement surrounding the topic. I lack understanding in my knowledge of situations and how I can view them differently versus other young adults. And I acknowledge the different coping skills that are different to my own when experiencing isolation. I would like to understand more which of transitions influence loneliness, how they affect young adults, and how does it affect young adults going further into the future. For the next slide, it is just a title page, which is going to indicate how I have the annotated bibliography next. So after this one, it's going to be four straight slides of a beautiful annotated bibliography of my chosen sources. So, to kick it off, this is my first article, which is titled A Propensity Score Matched Study of Changes in Loneliness Surrounding Major Life Events. There is the citation, which I would say those last names, but I totally butcher them. But there it is. Anyways, moving forward, the summary is this pre registered study examined the relationship between various family and work related major life events and changes in loneliness using propensity score matched data from a Dutch longitudinal study. Mixed events models were used to analyze loneliness trajectories before, during, and after 10 major life events. The study found that loneliness changes varied by event and individual, with significant increases in loneliness following the transition into parenthood, marital separation, widowhood, and job loss. Gradual changes were also observed after marriage. Oops, sorry, I just read the same sentence by accident. No significant changes in loneliness were noted for transitions into paid employment, reemployment, after unemployment, retirement, and cohabilitation. The study also found that the impact of major life events on loneliness differed based on whether the event occurred at an average age or at a younger or older age. The findings underscore the importance of considering major life events as potential triggers of loneliness and highlight methodological challenges in studying these effects. For the evaluation, loneliness was measured annually with the six item De Jong Dierveld loneliness scale, participants responded on a 3-point scale, with the scale scores processed in 2 steps. This was the quantitative source. And for the application, researchers were aware that they investigated the first occurrence of an event and did not examine changes that might occur when different events occur together. And the study provides a rigorous and systematic examination of whether family and work related major life events are associated with changes in loneliness. And with all of those letters and words, the word count came to 245. So, Article 2, the title is Emotional Distress in Young Adults During the COVID-19 Pandemic, Evidence of Risk and Resilience from a Longitudinal Cohort Study. There's a citation. I'm not saying that all out loud. Anyways, for the summary, it is the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic and subsequent lockdown could be called a perfect storm for increased emotional anguish. The data came from a cohort study. Participants' emotional distress, COVID related stressors, and coping methods were assessed at the age of 22 during the lockdown. Participants reported higher levels of perceived stress and anger, but not internalizing symptoms during the epidemic before. Pre COVID 19, emotional distress was the strongest predictor, and during pandemic, emotional distress, followed by during pandemic economic and psychosocial stressors, hopelessness, and pre pandemic social stressors. In the community sample, pre pandemic suffering, secondary pandemic repercussions, and pre pandemic social stressors were more consistently associated with young adults' emotional discomfort than COVID 19 related health risk exposures. For the evaluation, this study uses data from a long term study of a representation group of young adults collected before and during COVID 19 lockdown pandemic in spring 2020. This is a quantitative study, and for the application, it's aware that it didn't assess symptoms of PTSD, which it may have increased in people exposed to COVID 19 related risks, such as certain jobs, health issues, hospitalizations, or death of a loved one. And the pandemic lockdown may have provided an opportunity for some young people to reflect on their life, make improvements, and despite its negative impact. And for this annotated thingy, the word count is 240. For Article 3, the title is Loneliness, Positive Life Events, and Psychological Maladjustment. When good things happen, even lonely people feel better. There's a citation. And for the summary, it is the current study examined loneliness and positive life events as predictors of psychological maladjustment in a sample of 327 adults. Aside from the expected impact of loneliness and psychological maladjustment, pleasant life events were found to enhance the prediction of melancholy, hopelessness, and suicidal conduct. Positive life events can mitigate the positive correlation between loneliness and maladjustment, and individuals had a high number of happy life events had a reduced positive correlation between loneliness and psychological maladjustment compared to those who had less positive occurrences. This article discusses how adults can better recognize and appreciate happy experiences in their lives. For the evaluation, researchers found that life events can predict psychological maladjustment in adulthood in addition to loneliness. Research has continuously shown a link between unpleasant life experiences and maladjustment among adults during past few decades. This is a qualitative study. For the application, future studies should focus on identifying the most significant positive life events, and positive life events are a key factor in understanding psychological maladjustment in adults, and they play a specific role in accounting for that alongside loneliness. And the word count of all of this is 193. For Article 4, it is titled Loneliness as Experienced by Adolescents and Young Adults, an explorative qualitative study. There's the citation. For the summary, it is globally, mental health issues in teenagers and young adults are on the rise, as is loneliness. This study is to investigate loneliness via the perspectives and experiences of teenagers and young adults. The research questions were as follows: how do adolescents and young adults describe and experience loneliness? And what sorts of loneliness do they describe? Data was gathered through interviews with 15 Swedish speaking Finns aged 17 to 30. Data was analyzed using content analysis, and loneliness has been connected to the past negative experiences, mental disease, or physical disorders, a self centered society, social standards, and social media. Three distinct types of loneliness have been identified as social loneliness, emotional loneliness, and existential loneliness. It is critical that adults and professionals can recognize, evaluate, and comprehend signs that adolescents and young adults are experiencing unpleasant emotions which may imply underlying loneliness. For the evaluation, adolescents and young adults' daily experiences with loneliness, including their own descriptions and experiences, should be explored, particularly in terms of varieties of loneliness they face today. With also this being a qualitative study, for the application, the study indicated that social media use among adolescents and young adults can both contribute and alleviate loneliness, with individuals experiencing emotional and existential loneliness. Negative experiences, mental illness, or physical diseases, self centered culture, societal norms, and social media were all associated to teenagers and young adults' loneliness in the study scenario. And for this whole thing, the word count was 233. Thank you so much for listening. Here are my references, and I hope you have a very great day.